What would you do if the child you love most in this world was taken from you, and the man who did it controlled your entire town? When billionaire Ethan Callahan returned to his quiet hometown of Maplewood, he thought he was there to build a luxury resort. But a single glance at the bruised face of a cafe waitress, Claire Matthews, changed everything. Her silence spoke volumes, her pain barely hidden. And then he saw the little girl she protected, like her life depended on it. Soon, Ethan found himself entangled in a storm of corruption, blackmail, and buried secrets. When Claire's sister Sophie was kidnapped by the same powerful man threatening her family's future, Ethan had to make an impossible choice: walk away or risk everything, including his life, to save her. But nothing could prepare him for what he'd uncover, or the lengths he'd go to keep a promise. This story begins with a scar and ends with something far more powerful. Stay with us, because what happens next might just restore your faith in second chances. Have you ever noticed someone's pain before they even said a word? It was supposed to be just another business trip. Ethan Callahan, billionaire hotel mogul, had returned to the sleepy town of Maplewood after 15 long years. His plan was simple: revitalize his family's long-abandoned estate into a luxury resort and move on. But fate had other plans, because everything changed the moment he walked into that dusty roadside cafe and saw the bruises on the waitress's face. She wore her pain like armor. Her name tag read Claire, and her eyes, though calm, carried a storm that no one else seemed to notice. Her lip was swollen. A faint purple bruise peeked out from under her cheekbone. But it was the way her fingers trembled when handing him the menu that made Ethan freeze. "Who did this to you?" he asked softly, unable to hide the alarm in his voice. Claire flinched and turned her head away, letting a streak of green-dyed hair fall over the bruises like a curtain. "Would you like the special or something from the menu?" she replied coldly. Ethan narrowed his eyes. He wasn't used to being dismissed. Not as the CEO of Callahan Hospitality, not as a man in a $1,000 suit. But Claire's defiance didn't offend him, it intrigued him. "I didn't mean to upset you," he said gently. "It just looks serious." "Accidents happen," she murmured, touching her cheek without looking at him. But this wasn't an accident. He could feel it. As she walked away, Ethan caught sight of a little girl in the far corner of the cafe, drawing quietly in a sketchbook. She had soft eyes and a serious face that didn't suit someone so young. Every few minutes, Claire would stop by her table to offer a small smile or ruffle her hair. The affection between them was obvious. "She's her sister," a voice said beside him. Ethan turned. A kind-looking older woman in an apron approached. "I'm Doris Allen," she said. "Owner of this place? You must be Ethan Callahan." He nodded, surprised to be recognized. "News travels fast in a small town," she added, but there was something guarded in her tone. "Especially when the prodigal son returns." "I'm not here to stir trouble," Ethan replied, "just to give new life to the old Callahan estate." "Your father would have been proud," Doris said, but her eyes didn't quite agree. Minutes later, as Ethan was leaving the cafe, a sharp cry rang out from the alley beside the building. He turned and saw Claire pinned against the wall by a tall man in a rumpled gray suit. He gripped her arm tightly, his voice low and threatening. "The deadline was yesterday, Claire. You think you can dodge me? You want me to make a call and have that little girl taken away?" "Richard, please," Claire whispered desperately. "Just a few more days, please." Ethan didn't hesitate. He strode forward, his voice firm and commanding. "Is there a problem here?" The man, Richard Vaughn, town administrator, turned startled by the interruption. His eyes raked over Ethan's suit and confident stance. "Private matter," Richard muttered. "None of your business." Ethan didn't flinch. "Any matter that involves threatening a woman is no longer private." There was a pause. Richard hesitated, then slowly let go of Claire's arm and offered a forced smile. "Vaughn. Richard Vaughn, town administrator." Ethan ignored the handshake. "I suggest you walk away," Ethan said. Richard gave Claire one last venomous look. "This isn't over," he hissed before vanishing into the street. Claire's shoulders trembled. Ethan looked at her concerned. "Do you want me to call the police?" "No," she said quickly. "Please don't. You don't understand who he is or what he's capable of. Then explain it to me." "I can't," Claire replied, her eyes flicking toward the cafe window, where the little girl, her sister Sophie, sat innocently still drawing. "You should leave," Claire said. "You being here will only make things worse." That night, Ethan was at his hotel reviewing property permits when his phone buzzed. The message chilled him. Fire at Alan's cafe. He raced across town. Flames had consumed the back half of the cafe. Claire sat on the curb outside, soaked in sweat and smoke. Her arms wrapped tightly around Sophie, who was sobbing into her chest. Claire's eyes met Ethan's. It wasn't an accident, she whispered. Rain began to fall. Come with me, Ethan said, removing his jacket to cover Sophie. I have a safe place. We don't need your charity, Claire said, still trembling. It's not charity. It's the right thing to do, and right now you don't have many options. Mrs. Allen nodded from nearby. Go with him, sweetheart. I'll stay here and handle things. Ethan took them to a small cottage on the outskirts of town, one of several properties he had recently purchased near the old Callahan estate. It wasn't much, but it had 2 rooms of warmth and safety. You can stay here as long as you need, Ethan said, switching on the heat. Sophie, exhausted from crying, soon fell asleep. Claire stood near the doorway, watching him. Why are you doing this? She asked. Let's just say I owe this town a debt, Ethan replied, and I recognize someone who's in real trouble. You don't know the half of it, she whispered. Richard Vaughn owns this town. He's got the cops, the mayor, even social services in his pocket. What does he have on you? Ethan asked. Claire hesitated. 2 years ago, our parents were killed in a car crash. I had to drop out of med school to raise Sophie. I borrowed money from Richard to keep our family's cafe running. Ethan nodded slowly. At first it was manageable, she said. Then he started demanding more. And when I refused to give him what he really wanted, he said he'd have Sophie taken from me. What about the bruises? Ethan asked quietly. Claire looked down. He came by yesterday. I fought back. The fire, Ethan concluded. It was a warning. I can't prove it, Claire said. But I know it was him. The rain continued outside, but inside that little cottage, a storm of a different kind was brewing. And Ethan Callahan, who had come to Maplewood for profit, found himself at the center of something far more dangerous and far more personal. We're so sorry to interrupt the story here, but we'll continue very soon. What would you have done if you were in Ethan's shoes? Do you think Claire is right to distrust help, or is she just scared of hope? Tell us what country you're watching from. We'd love to know how far this story has traveled. If you're enjoying the story, please hit that like button and tap the heart to support us. The knock came just before dawn. Ethan jolted awake to the sound, 3 sharp raps against the door of the cottage. Claire was already up, clutching Sophie tightly, her face pale, as if she'd expected this moment all along. Standing outside was Lauren Brooks, Ethan's assistant. In her hand, a cup of coffee. On her face, pure disapproval. We need to talk, she said curtly once Claire had gone back inside. Outside on the porch, the air was cold and Lauren's voice was colder. What are you doing, Ethan? You came here to close a deal, not play savior in some small-town drama? This isn't drama, Ethan said calmly. It's abuse, blackmail. A child's safety is at stake. Lauren shook her head. Since Isabel died, you've been chasing lost causes like a man possessed. You think this will fix it? That by saving this woman, you're somehow saving your sister too? Ethan didn't answer, because maybe deep down she wasn't entirely wrong. That afternoon, as the rain cleared, Ethan found himself sketching a development plan for the estate, one that included employment opportunities for the locals, and maybe even a training center for small businesses. But he couldn't focus. Not with Sophie sitting silently by the window tracing lines in her sketchbook. Not with Claire still flinching every time the floor creaked. Then came the call. It was Michael Carter, his old friend, and now a lawyer in the state capitol. I've been looking into Richard Vaughn, he said. And Ethan, it's worse than you thought. Michael described a network of extortion threats and silencing dissent. The man doesn't just control the market board. He owns the police chief, the building inspector, even the county clerk. If you're going to go after him, you'll need solid proof and a backup plan when the system tries to bury you. Later that night, Claire sat across from Ethan in the dimly lit cottage living room. Her hands were wrapped around a mug of tea, untouched and growing cold. I don't know how to thank you, she said quietly, for helping, for not giving up. I haven't done anything yet, he replied, but I want to. She stared at him. You don't even know us? I know what fear looks like. I know what silence sounds like. Claire hesitated. Then she pulled out an old folder from beneath the couch. These are the loan papers, his handwriting, his threats. I kept everything, in case something ever happened to me. Ethan took it, feeling the weight of her unspoken trust. The next day, Michael arrived in Maplewood. He brought court records, maps of Richard's properties, and a list of victims, too scared to speak. If even one of them talks, he said, this whole thing crumbles. As they spoke, Sophie approached Ethan holding another drawing. It was of him, smiling, with Claire and Sophie on either side, all three of them holding hands. Below it, in careful block letters, she had written, "Thank you for not leaving." That was the moment something inside Ethan shifted. He'd come to this town a businessman, but now he was something else. Someone who had a reason to fight, and Richard Vaughn must have felt it, because 2 nights later, Claire's scream shattered the peace. Ethan burst into the cottage and found her on the floor, blood trickling down her temple. "They took her," she gasped. "They took Sophie." Ethan dropped to his knees. "Who 2 men?" "I didn't recognize them, but they left this." She handed him a crumpled note smeared with dirt and anger. "Now you know how it feels to lose someone. Drop the charges or she disappears forever." The world narrowed to a single point in Ethan's mind. He called Michael, then Lauren, then the state police. Not the local department. Never them. Claire gripped his arm, panic and rage in her eyes. "You can't involve them. He said he'd hurt her if you did." "I can't just do nothing," Ethan whispered. "You have to find her. Please, please bring her back." Michael arrived within the hour. "We have to think clearly. He wants to exchange Sophie for silence. But if we back off, we lose everything, including her." Lauren brought a map. "We need to guess where he's hiding her." "His known properties," Claire stepped forward. "The old farmhouse at the edge of town. Richard's family owned it for years. It's abandoned, creepy. My dad used to do accounting for them. I hated going there." As she spoke, Ethan's phone lit up. A private number. He answered without a word. Richard's voice hissed in his ear. "Drop the case. Sign the land over to me. Maybe then your little trio walks away." "I want to talk to her," Ethan demanded. "Not how this works," Richard snarled. "You've got until dawn." The call cut off. Ethan turned to Claire. "We're getting her back. I promise you." "Don't make promises you can't keep," she whispered. "I've never meant anything more in my life. We're so sorry to pause here, but we'll continue in next part very soon." What would you do if your child or your sister was taken by someone powerful and untouchable? Do you think Ethan and Claire are strong enough to outsmart Richard Vaughn? Tell us what country you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're enjoying this story, please tap the heart and like the video to support us. The farmhouse loomed in the early morning mist like a memory no one wanted to revisit. Its paint had long since peeled away its windows, dark and hollow, and the old oak tree beside it stretched toward the sky like a claw frozen in grief. But to Ethan Callahan, this crumbling place wasn't just a ruin. It was a threat, a cage holding the one person Claire couldn't live without. He parked at a distance, headlights off. Claire sat beside him, her hands clenched white in her lap. She hadn't slept. Neither had he. "She's in there," Claire whispered. "I can feel it." Ethan nodded. "We wait for the signal. Michael and the state agents are circling the back. We move on my call." But then they heard it. A faint voice, high and soft, singing. Claire's breath hitched. "That's her. That's Sophie." Without waiting, she pushed open the door and bolted toward the house. "Claire, wait!" Ethan jumped out, chasing after her. They reached the back porch just as one of Richard's hired men appeared. He drew a weapon, but before he could even aim, Michael tackled him from behind. A second agent disarmed the thug and secured the perimeter. Inside, the air was thick with dust and fear. Claire moved like lightning through the creaking halls, her heart guiding her more than memory. She stopped in front of a closed door. From the other side came the soft hum of the lullaby. She opened it. Sophie was curled in the corner, clutching her sketchbook. Her eyes widened when she saw Claire. "You came," she whispered. Claire dropped to her knees. "Of course I did, baby. I'll always come." But the moment shattered when Richard's voice exploded from the hallway. "Nobody leaves," he appeared with a gun fury etched into every muscle of his face. "I warned you, Callahan. You should have walked away." Ethan stepped in front of Claire and Sophie, arms raised. "It's over, Richard. Back down. The authorities are here." Richard laughed bitterly. "You think this ends with a courtroom? You think justice exists in a town I built?" He raised the gun. A single shot rang out. Richard collapsed to the ground, his weapon clattering beside him. Behind him stood Lauren, shaking slightly, gun in hand. "Turns out justice does exist," she said. Paramedics arrived within minutes. Richard was alive barely. Sophie was safe. And Ethan, though he hadn't been the one to pull the trigger, felt something inside him finally settle. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Richard was charged with kidnapping, assault, arson, and a long list of crimes going back more than a decade. The evidence gathered from the farmhouse and Michael's team ensured there would be no loopholes this time. Sophie, once so quiet, began to laugh again. Claire returned to her old notebooks, revisiting the dream of finishing medical school. And Ethan, for the first time in years, he wasn't running from ghosts. One evening, he invited Claire and Sophie to the lakeside on the edge of the estate. The sun was setting in a blaze of orange and gold. Fireflies blinked lazily between the reeds. It was the kind of place where beginnings made sense. He knelt down, pulling a small box from his coat pocket. Claire froze. "It's not fancy," Ethan said. "It's not even planned, but it's real, and I've never been more certain of anything." He opened the box, a silver band with a single emerald. "Sophie once said, 'I saved you both,'" he continued. "But the truth is, you saved me. You reminded me what it means to care, to fight, to love." Claire's eyes filled with tears. Sophie jumped up and down beside them. Say yes," Claire smiled through her tears. "Yes, Ethan, yes." Years later, Maplewood would barely resemble the town it once was. The Callahan estate had become a thriving hotel and community center. Claire, now Dr. Claire Callahan, ran a free clinic for families in need. Sophie, a young artist, had her first painting featured in a national gallery titled Safe Haven, a piece inspired by the night she was rescued. But it was a small plaque beneath a tree on the edge of the property that told the real story. In memory of the wounds we carry and the love that heals them. Because sometimes it starts with noticing the pain in someone else. Sometimes that's how lives are changed forever. Before we go, let us ask you, do you believe second chances can heal even the deepest scars? If someone like Ethan showed up in your town, would you trust him? Let us know where in the world you're watching from. We'd love to hear your story. And if this story touched your heart, please tap the heart, and share this video with someone who still believes in hope. If you love this story, comment number 3 below. If it was just okay, drop a 2. And if it didn't quite hit the mark, let us know with a 1. We read every response.